Recon is one of those areas in the dealership that everyone knows is important, but very few stores have dialed in. Every used car that hits the lot goes through some version of the process, yet delays, lack of visibility, and misalignment between sales and service can quietly cost dealers thousands in aging inventory. What's interesting is that more dealer groups are starting to rethink the entire approach. We're seeing centralized recon and PDI centers, better tracking of cycle times, and technology that gives leadership real visibility into where vehicles are in the process and where things are getting stuck. So today we're digging into what that actually looks like in practice. We're going to talk about the operational side of recon, how dealer groups are building accountability across departments, how better data is changing decision-making, and how tools like ReconVision are helping stores speed up turn times and reduce the hidden costs tied up in used inventory. I'm excited to get into it with the team from Reynolds & Reynolds and some of their partner dealerships and hear what they're seeing across the industry right now.
My name is Eric Moen. I work for Reynolds & Reynolds. I manage the reconditioning team. ReconVision is the product that I represent. Been in the automotive industry about 18 years and have been in the reconditioning space for just over 10 years.
Excellent. Jacob?
All right, Jacob Teets, work at Jeff Ford Trembler, part of Henry Automotive Group. I've been in the new car and used car sales for quite some time. Used cars is always kind of been my thing, but in the reconditioning space for probably a good 12 to 15 years now.
Yeah, my name's David Kennelly. I'm a fixed operations director for the Hendrick Automotive Group, kind of a platform manager over 10 different dealerships.
Excellent. All right, everybody, welcome today. Obviously, we are here to discuss ReconVision and Recon in general. And so we're starting to see larger dealer groups building centralized recon or PDI centers. Operationally, what separates the groups that actually gain efficiency from the ones that just end up creating another bottleneck?
Well, I guess I can speak from a broad scope. I mean, I know that Hendrick Automotive has been great adopters of this type of process, and I've seen it in a lot of other dealer groups as well. When you've got a lot of stores in one general vicinity, having one centralized location to recondition or PDI all of those vehicles provides efficiencies because you get it dialed in. You're not, sharing frontline technicians with dedicated processes and slowing down that process. So if you're looking at a used car manager's perspective, and I won't speak too much for Jake, but from Jake's perspective, those cars are critical for him to get those out and get them ready for sale. And if they're being shared in a shop along with, with retail service, they tend to get pushed to the back burner when you've got customer waiters or you've got, irritated customers or whatever that might be. And then those cars are just sitting there depreciating and you have no, inventory that you want out front. So having a reconditioning center, it just streamlines the process overall, and it becomes a very repetitive thing where you can crank those out very quickly. And I know that's something that David knows very well, so I'll tap his shoulder there.
Yeah, no, we in Concord, we have 5 dealerships that are tied to one PDI center. All of our new car process runs out of there from start to finish, the drop off of the vehicle all the way through the detail and the car being transported back to the individual stores. And the tool that Eric's team has supported us with gives us visibility to each individual bucket of operation. So you have the PDI being done with the state inspection. That gets completed and we move the cars over to window tint or we move them to detail depending on where the need is. And this gives us the ability to move them around in order to get the cars to the front line faster. And that's on the new car side. The used car side is very similar. We have the stores are separated by a highway. So we split them up. There's 2 with one side and 3 on the other side, but they all run out of one of the buildings on those properties. For us, it's a huge time saver from a management perspective where I can go in and look and see I have a problem here. these cars are taking 5 days to get through the process. Instead of waiting for a sales manager to call me and say, hey, man, you're backed up, we need to get these cars out, we can go in daily, hourly, and look and see where we're at and what's going on in our business currently.
Jacob, from your side, I know coming from the fixed op side, sometimes it's easy to lose sight of the fact that you need that car out there quickly. So how does this help to keep that in front of mind for everybody to understand that this car can't sit? It has to get to the front line as quickly as possible.
Well, front of mind is the right way to put it. And I think that to kind of piggyback what they were saying is that the awareness is key. Okay, this ability to see, and although we don't have a remote recon center, our detail building is actually off-site. So it gives us a lot of insight to see where cars are moving, where cars get hung up. A little backstory for Jeff Ford Chevrolet. We're unique in the fact that we turn our inventory between 22 and 26 times a year. And we've done that for about 15 years running right now. And what that means is frankly that we have a very high pace. We don't stock but about 4.5 million and 155 cars in stock and used cars, but they're selling 165 to 185 a month. So we spin the wheel very fast, and that means that you have to have all of these processes basically dialed in order to keep the efficiency moving and keep the big wheel turning. So just having awareness for everybody that's involved in it, because that's frankly the difficult part of recon is that you can have so many different people touching so many different cars. They're all going one different way, every different direction at all different times. So having a tool that everybody has access to, that creates visibility, and then of course visibility creates accountability, and in fashion that we can call those people and say, hey, what's up with this one? And it really invokes the ability for managers to ask the question why, and not doing it in an accusing manner, but it's just, hey, why is this car there? Is there a valid reason? And really, frankly, it causes you to ask the next question, which is, hey, what can we do about it? Is there anything we can do to push this one through? You have a lot of different scenarios where there's a lot of human factors involved in the car business still. It takes human input to get all these cars through, but sometimes there are snags, there are real reasons that come up, there are things that, parts availability, manpower, there's a lot of different reasons that can cause a car to get stalled, where ReconVision gives you that ability that if you have a car that gets stalled, you can make a phone call and say, hey, can I get somebody else put on this one? What can I do? I got to have this car delivered tomorrow. It allows you to create communication between all of the team members that create efficiency through the process. And that's the biggest part for us, is that we need to be really efficient in getting these cars to the front line so we can get them sold. Our objective is obviously everybody's objective is to sell as many cars as possible, but ours is to sell them fast. And once you get kind of everybody in the recon process in tune with the idea that the faster they get them out correctly, that we can get them sold, that we can buy more and bring them back into the funnel for them, to give them more opportunity to work on more cars, to create more gross profit for the store, ultimately make more money for themselves. It just gives you the visibility to be able to spin the wheel that fast. It really poked a lot of holes in our processes that we thought were pretty good when we first started using this tool, and kind of found out the areas that we had opportunity for improvement. Now, there are some things you can't change, in my opinion, which are outside vendors, recalls. There's a lot of different things that you only have so much influence over, right? But what it does do is it allows us to not forget about those things that are out of sight, out of mind, but also allows us to put emphasis on influencing what we can influence here in the store to make a positive effect and keep it moving.
Excellent. And so, Jacob, I'm going to stay with you because you gave me a segue to my next question. And so when a dealer or a group starts to move to a technology like ReconVision, what changes are required in the workflow, the communication, that have to keep sales, service, and inventory aligned? You just kind of alluded to it poked some holes in processes that you thought were working.
Yeah, well, really what it is gives you the ability to find out where the balls are being dropped. And whether you want to look at it like that or not, that's what it is. And a lot of times what you find out is that things aren't done with intention. That's just how they happen. But you're allowed to identify those areas, and then you can take corrective action in communicating effectively with those people, the whys of what we need to do. This is why I need to do this. This is why we got to get the car to the front line, and it forces the increase in communication. It was a really big opportunity for us, frankly, that when we first put ReconTrack and our ReconVision in place, that we had to have a meeting. We started having to have a meeting every day, and that meeting was about all of that parts of the communication. Now, late stages of the game, it's not really necessary today. If we do bring a new person into that mix, we will have to communicate a lot of different things to them about our processes and why they are the way they are. But once we got that level of communication through all of our teammates and going to those meetings every week, there just starts to have a general understanding. So even the technician understands why we got to get that car in 2 days. They start to understand that ordering the parts at 4 o'clock means a difference versus waiting till tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. to order the parts when you get there. Now, all of these little incremental things are where the opportunity exists that allows the dealership to be sort of more profitable. It's no, hopefully you don't, I guess I would say hopefully that you don't have any, huge eye-opening moments. But it's all about finding all the small incremental stuff. And again, like I had mentioned, influencing the things that you can influence. All of the challenges that it seems we have today in business is really about communicating effectively with people and having them understand the goals and how to get there. And I think this does a great job of showing them on paper statistically, hey, these are our areas of opportunity. This is where we can improve this time. And it's usually just something super simple. It's just, like I mentioned, it's about ordering parts the day before you leave. Everybody wants to get out the door, but if they understand, hey, I can have those parts waiting for me at my bay when I get here in the morning, I can finish that job before I get a waiter, I can get that car moving for the process, then it aligns with their goals too, right? Their personal goals are, as a technician or even a detail tech, is to turn as many hours, turn as many cars as possible. It's the same goals, right? But we have to kind of align our timeline with theirs, and how do we make those two mesh efficiently? One thing that's unique about our store is that we don't have a dedicated recon team. Our used cars, even though we have a really high volume and efficiency, they're still mixed in with our normal service retail business. It's taken a lot of levels of communication and a lot of meetings to get that all worked out. But if they understand that, like Eric mentioned earlier, they can't just back burner us completely, because if they do that, it slows the whole process down. Again, it's just understanding communication, and I think ReconVision does a fantastic job of giving people accurate information that they can complain about, so that they're not just pointing fingers, and they're showing them what the opportunity is to improve and get better. And sometimes that may even mean that you make different things for people that reflect some of the goals that you have within the system. We've got some stuff that is tied to it for a couple of our people, and it's amazing how that stuff works. Once you tie somebody's pay and give them hard and concrete goals that align with what the dealership goals are, generally they find a way to get there.
And David, what did you see where you're running multiple stores into one funnel? What kind of workflow or communication changes did you see?
It kind of gave us the ability to hold everybody accountable from the front to the back, because you'd have times where we'd go looking for cars that never had gotten pushed into the process. Well, why? Well, they're still in transport, or they're sitting in the used car manager's desk, or whatever the reason might have been. And then, from the back coming forward is we now had the ability to look at a technician and look at the parts department and make sure that we were all aligned together and getting the right parts as quick as possible, and back in the hands of the technician to repair the vehicle. looking at the workflow from detail and if you use a new car and window tint and using the vendors to go through the process, we found that we weren't always pushing the cars the same direction when they completed the PDI piece of it, because we had labor and detail and tint was backed up. So we had the ability to actually see when we had these bottlenecks, we could make adjustments or call audibles to fix the problem immediately and never let there really truly become a problem. So I think some of the adjustments we made in our process were that we now can look at things from a pretty broad view, especially with 5 dealerships, and 2 of them are Honda and Toyota stores that are high volume. I mean, those dealerships are selling 250 new cars plus a month, and you're looking at 500 cars between them alone going through that department. I think it really gave us the ability to be extremely dialed into the amount of personnel we needed, to who was delegated to push what bucket into the next bucket, getting the vendors involved and using the tool on their end. What was another big piece of this, because if they're not moving their side of it, our side becomes stagnant and there's no pipeline left to feed the vehicles through. And
Eric, so from your broader view of all the dealerships that you see using the product, what kind of workflows or communication things are changing for those stores?
Yeah, so I kind of want to touch on something that Jake and David both said. So obviously reconditioning is something that touches virtually every department in the dealership. And ideally, you've got everybody that's involved having a hand in the tool that you're using to measure the product. You want an accurate measurement. And the only way that's going to work is if you've got a really good team culture. Obviously, Hendrick has really adopted that, and they've really got that dialed in. But if you don't have everybody involved, to David's point, if you're not managing, say, a vendor or an internal detailer or a body shop guy or a parts guy, whatever that is, then you're not accurately measuring your process. So then you're going to have a lot of false positives. So you've got this great, amazing number of saying I can get my cars out frontline ready in 3 or 4 or 5 days, but is that really accurate? Right? I'd rather have a number that's ugly. To Jake's point, when he was on this product several years ago for the beginning, they may not have liked their number right out of the gate, but they knew that was a real accurate number, and they knew where they had to fix things, what they had to address. So having a team culture is important, not only for accountability, but in accuracy and measurement, but also to provide a quality product out front. A lot of times, what I do see is dealerships. They'll pencil whip a process just for the sake of speed to put a small number out there in a cycle time, and all they're doing is cutting their nose to spite their face. And that's obviously not every dealer, but I do see some dealers do that. And I would venture to say that the dealers that have it dialed in, that know that it's not just about speed, but it's also about putting a quality product out there, having the visibility and accountability of a tool that is a shared platform for your entire process from the time you acquire the car until the time the car's frontline ready. And that's, again, including every person in the process. That's how you're going to be able to measure that accurately and truly account for everybody that's involved.
Yeah, the ability to have your vendors involved in this also, because so my next question was about Recon sitting in between everything, right? It's in between service and sales and vendors and maybe another dealer if it's an off brand that it's got to go out to get a recall done, right? There's literally a number of people that are around it, why it sits in the middle, and so in your experience, what shift or culture has to happen so Recon does become that shared responsibility instead of the departmental blame game, which we've been really effective at dealerships of doing over the years?
Yeah, that's a great question. The culture shift can really start in a number of places. What I see in really well-run dealer groups or dealerships is it's top-down buy-in, right? You define what you want success to look like, whether that's a better quality product or a faster time to market or whatever that is. And that needs to be the narrative, and that needs to be the culture that's driven all the way down to the bottom. And you get buy-in from every team in your dealership, from variable to fixed to parts to right down to the detailer. And a lot of it is trying to cultivate pride in what people do, right? Whatever name you put on that, ultimately that used product that you put on there, you want everybody to take pride in what they do, because it's putting your name on there. It's putting your stamp of, hey, I did that. I put that out there. I did it in X time, and I put a quality product out there. And really, really well-run organizations that I've seen have that built in. And a lot of times it also is a part of a pay plan, right? I know that if I get these vehicles done in X amount of time and it hits the mark and it says, this is the level that we have to hit in quality. If I can do that level and I can do it in that time frame, then it means money in my pocket. It benefits everybody at the dealership.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, having a standard that we push people to, I mean, that's our expectation, is that we get our cars to the front line in 4.5, 5 days. I mean, and anything more than that falls below the standard that's set. And to Eric's point, is there's people that are on pay plans to help push that along. But I think really the culture of bringing everybody together and having the meetings that we were talking about and doing those things to align everyone, I think is a really big part of this. And if they're not aligned, us from the outside looking in, it's hard for us to really pick out truly where the weakness is, because it could be, hey, the service department's not getting done, but the sales department's not getting the keys to them fast enough. Well, who's responsible for that piece of it? And then we can start to drill into those individual things. But it really, I think it all comes back to that culture piece that everybody's talked about, is getting that team to align together. Everybody that's in charge of their individual piece of it, working with the next manager to make sure that we're hitting our standard or our goal to have a final product that's a good product on the front line and ready to go.
Yeah, I would concur. To bring back what Eric had mentioned before, is that the first step of managing anything is measuring. Unless you measure it, it's really difficult to manage it. So you can have meetings about with all the entire recon team, everybody involved. You can have all those, and you can communicate expectations, standards, you can communicate all that stuff. But if you don't have a way to measure it, to hold those people accountable and find out where your areas of opportunity are, then it's just a lot of talk, really. You know what I mean? Like, sure, the goals, everybody wants to be on the team, everybody wants the same things, but eventually you have to put a pencil to it and measure those things so you can say, okay, well, this is, it identifies the person that you need to go speak to give them the message of, hey, this is why we need to do it this way. This is what your benefit is going to be personally. This is what the benefit for the store is going to be. And communicating that message to them. Frankly, for the culture piece first, just get everybody in the room together. You don't talk about silly stuff in the car business, but get a bunch of guys from service, get a bunch of guys from sales that are all done in the recon process and detailers. Put them all in the same room, buy a couple pizzas, and have a lot of conversation and talk about what your goals are, how you're going to get there, and where those areas of opportunity are in ReconVision. And you'll be surprised how much magic happens in a very short amount of time with just that amount of awareness, just the amount of, hey, everybody in the same room, let's just talk like we're normal people, and remove this piece from the game, right? And I think that's the power of the tool, is it gives you the ammo to show that to people and show, hey, this, it wasn't intentional, but this is what happened, and this is what cost us. And it doesn't, I wouldn't say that all this stuff equates to us losing car deals, but speed in this game has always meant more than what people give it credit to. One of the benefits that we talk about constantly at our store with the used car market, we sell more used cars than new cars. We're really unique in that fashion. Not a lot of stores are like that. It's a tough game to be able to do that. It means we have to actively purchase cars. If we have to go buy 50, 60 cars a month in order to keep that up, we have to be able to have a speed to the game so that we can continue to move with the market. So if we're constantly outpacing the amount of trade-ins we're taking in, and we got to purchase cars, it forces a lot of things to happen automatically for us. It forces us to pay attention to the market, because we're constantly buying cars while we're selling cars. If the market goes up, goes down, changes, all of that stuff, we're getting that real-time information just by being in the game of, hey, we sold 6 cars today. We sold 7, the day before that, we got to buy 13 cars over the next 3 days, between trade-ins, whatever. It's about being in tune with that stuff. It's about having our inventory manager who's setting up transportation, letting the service department know, hey, it's Tuesday, they bought 14 cars. They're in 3 different states. This is when they're coming in. They're going to hit Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Some of them won't be stocked in until Monday, but you're going to have 10 cars waiting for you on Monday. So plan accordingly with your appointments. It's all about that level of communication. And what happens is every little step that you take in the right direction continues to show you more benefit. And you start to realize that all the little details, all that 0.5%, 1%, at the end of the day, over the course of the year, ends up to be translate to a lot of profitability.
So when leadership wants accountability across departments, what are the metrics or the visibility that would tend to change behavior the fastest for sales managers, service managers, the recon teams? Because there's ultimately, we all want more customers, happy customers, right? But the vision from sales to service to recon is completely different on what they're after there. So how do you gain that alignment? What moves the needle the fastest?
I would probably say getting in touch with people where they feel it the most, which is usually their wallet. So if like our technicians, they love used cars. They love used cars. Used car department always says yes. Very few of them do they say no. So comparatively speaking to any other car that they're going to bring in, and the technician's going to bring in, they're going to write up and they're going to take some some suggestions. Used car department does almost all of it. So they start having an understanding that, hey, the faster you get this car done, get it done correctly, produce the product that we're willing to put our name on, put out front, be proud of, have a salesperson doesn't have to make excuses for it, right? Then the quicker we get to sell that, put it in somebody's driveway, and then go to auction and buy another one or trade another one and get the same opportunity again. So for a technician, it just means, hey, there's going to be more. I mean, used cars is the gravy train, right? That's what technicians call it. So the more cars we put on the gravy train, everybody wins. Detail technicians win, salespeople win, the dealership win, customers win. It's a win around the board, but it's about understanding and translating. What does it mean for them? What's in it for them? And the reality is it's just higher production, ease of doing business. The more roadblocks that we can remove for our people in any job and make their job easier to be productive, the happier they become. It's like magic. The more productive they are, it's because they're more productive. They're getting paid more. Right? That's everybody. There are some people that probably go to work just to have a good time. I'd like to think that we have a lot of people here that are having a good time at work, but I know that's not the only reason they show up. I know that for sure. They're here to make some money and get paid. So at the end of the day, if you can figure out how to correlate those things for everybody and make it match up in their brain, then all of a sudden that's when the magic happens. But it's all about communication. But this is again the tool that forces that communication. It forces you, it gives you the accurate information that you need. And Eric can tell you, we've had a relationship for a long time. When we started looking at some of our data, we were 3 to 4 days higher than what we'd already thought we were in front of. And now we're 6 days less than that on average. And it was just about getting all of those people that are involved in the process on the same page, in the same room, having an understanding the same messaging, having the same goals, and what's in it for me, right? Once you get that communicated to them, then you start to see some results.
Yeah, I would probably tie on to the roadblock conversation real quick. And I think if you look at every store is probably going to be a little bit different. And where you're going to get your biggest return is where you find those roadblocks at. When Eric and his team came in and installed the software and we had tags for different makes and different models, the breakdowns weren't always the same from the Toyota to the Honda store to the Dodge store. It was different places. So having the ability to break all of that information out and actually look at where the problems were by store or by department, I think that's where you're going to find, and from my perspective, you're going to find your biggest gain is where are the biggest bottlenecks. Let's fix those first, and we operate from there. I think that's where, from a 30,000 foot view, the software and the tool that they've brought to us is.
All right, Eric, let's pull you back into this. And so dealers everywhere tracking cycle time. And like Jacob said, sometimes the numbers are not what they appear. What are some of the most common mistakes that you see dealers make when they're measuring that recon cycle time before they have a tool to accurately do it?
Well, without a tool, there's a lot of things that can be a problem. If you don't have something that's going to accurately measure it, if you're using a whiteboard or you're using an email thread or a text thread or a Google shared spreadsheet that requires a manual update, the date and timestamps that can hold people accountable aren't going to be accurate. You're relying on the human element again. So you need something that has the automation to it that's going to say, hey, when David is done with his inspection, he's going to click a button and it immediately puts a date and timestamp on it and immediately starts the clock on the next step in the process. Without the automation, you're going to have inaccuracies. And if you don't include everybody in the process, so again, if you're not including detail, if you're not including parts, if you're not including the vendors, the offsites, the in-transits, right, the sublets, any other process that is going to have a time on it where you can't finish that vehicle and get it ready for sale, it's going to create a black hole in your measurement process. So that number that you're measuring yourself against is not accurate. So in whatever manual tool you're using, you can come up with this 4 or 5 day number because you didn't account for 2 or 3 days. You may think you're doing great, but at the end of the day, your dealership is still losing money on that vehicle. Again, to Jake's point, when they first adopted ReconVision for their reconditioning process, the tool they were previously using gave them a different number, right? Because they weren't measuring everything. We advocated we want to include everything. They didn't like the ugly number they were getting, but now they knew where they needed to press a little bit, and they were able to, over the course of 90 days, 120 days to get that number down, even below what they thought they were to begin with. And you can't do that if you're not accounting for everything.
And so once a dealership finally has some accurate tracking, what's the first operational change that you typically see leaders make with that data?
I would say, and I think Jake alluded to it earlier as well, it's something that I always advocate for, is having some sort of morning huddle with your team. You have some sort of leadership, whether that's an internal advisor, used car manager, service manager, whoever's kind of spearheading your overall reconditioning process, to bring the team leaders in, 3-4 people. It takes about a 5-minute meeting, and let's just discuss the 5 or 10 vehicles that may be of concern that we need to address today. And then you want to circle back and have some sort of follow-up before the end of that day. It becomes a part of the process, and it becomes a part of the culture that you're going to be held accountable for those cars every single day as a byproduct of moving that hot potato, if you will, to the next bucket and keeping it going. Your overall time to market gets reduced, right? Otherwise, it's one of those, I'm just going to look back and I'm going to look at my process overall and I'm going to watch my number go up or down. But what are you doing proactively, right, to reduce that number? If everything you do is measure the after the fact number, that's reacting. And that money is spent, that time is gone. I can't do anything with it. So we advocate for looking at what you're doing actively today and be proactive with your team by having some sort of morning huddle. And I think that's probably been the biggest success that I've seen as far as, what action and what they do to integrate that within their culture to see their numbers reduce.
David, I'm going to start with you on this closing question. If a dealer is listening today and they want to cut their recon cycle time by 30% in the next 90 days, what's the first 2 things that they should be looking at inside their operation?
It's twofold. Kind of like I said earlier, is the first thing that I'm going to look at is where are the bottlenecks, and I'm going to go to those. But generally where we find those things is the transition from sales to service. Is that happening smoothly? Is it happening during the day? Is it happening all day? Or do they have a process in place for that? One of the other big things is really looking at the parts availability. And how quickly can I get parts? The answer a lot of times when you walk into a parts store is, oh, we can have it tomorrow or we can have it in a week. Nobody's doing the research to figure out how quickly we can actually obtain those things. The faster that the parts department reacts to a part situation, the faster the car gets to the front line. Generally when I look at across platforms, that's generally the two places you find the room for biggest improvement, from my perspective.
Jacob, same question. The dealers listening, they want to cut their recon costs by 30% in the next 90 days. What are the first two things that they should be looking at?
I think communication, like you were saying, from the sales to service, the big thing for us is communicating to them what we have coming, knowing that they're going to have to work it in with the other retail business. It's just that level of communication. Hey, we got these many cars coming to so many trades. So our inventory manager, who also kind of spearheads our recon program, does a communication with all of the players every morning about how many cars we got, how many trades are retail, what cars are in the system that are a little bit slowed down and need to get moving. And I think just that putting on top of mind awareness of what our goals are for that specific day, I think makes a big difference. It's about things that might just get lost to the wayside sometimes. We had a vehicle yesterday that we had sold that came back into service for some recon. We ordered a part for it. The part was on 7 days back order. As it turns out, after a phone call to see if there was any other solution that we might have, turns out we ordered the wrong part. We actually had the right part in stock. Those things happen. It's a human business. There's a lot of humans touching a lot of different stuff. So when that happens, I think just having a program that you can look at and say, hey, this is where I'm stopped. Is there any other way to work this out? Will be a big help. And again, it's just communicating a lot of times. But if you don't have something like ReconVision, the car is just over there. It's in service doing this thing. We're just waiting for it to get back. They'll get done with it when they get done with it. Not knowing, who to necessarily reach out to. At this point now, my premium team has the cell number for almost every single technician in the shop. So they can look, see who's working on it. They can see their notes. They can say, hey, send me 2 more pictures of this so I can have a better understanding of it. They don't have to waste 20 minutes of their time walking from one building to the next. Those things all make a huge impact. It's about having that, again, open line of communication between the used car department head and the technician. Communication is ultimately what we do as a business, right? We communicate value to customers, but just the fact of having really good open lines of communication through all the parties involved with recon is going to be a godsend for everybody that's trying to speed up that process. That's where it's at. It's about getting everybody on the same page. Again, it's the tool that points to the areas of where your opportunity are. That's what the discovery is, right? It just says, hey, this is where you need to look. This is something that this is a lot of lines, and you got an opportunity here. Doesn't mean let's go beat up anybody. It just means that, hey, let's talk about it and see if we can figure out how to make it a little bit better. And I think that is the key. When you can again show people statistically, hey, this is where we're at. Again, understanding. They keep saying those same things, man. That's where there's no special sauce, man. That's where it's at. I mean, it's just about getting people on the same page. And if you think back to before we had a tool like that, instead of the used car manager calling that technician and saying, hey, what he's doing is he's calling the fixed operations director. He's then calling the service line manager. He's then calling the dispatcher. He's then saying, oh, I'll go check it out, and then forgets about it, and then he goes, oh, I forgot about it, so I'll check it out tomorrow morning. All of the amount of time that you wasted in those different steps that really didn't need to be there. So I think just the communication piece is such a huge deal, but it's going to give you accurate information that you need to attack your areas of opportunity and weak points.
Communication comes up in everything, doesn't it? It's amazing.
The funny part about my job being general sales manager here is that I get all of the not happy customers too, and almost 99% of the time I would say that everything that we have a problem with is almost always down to a lack of communication or miscommunication. It's really almost all the problems that we have, whether they're service, sales related, customer related, it's almost always comes down to poor communication or lack thereof.
Absolutely. All right, Eric, speaking of communication, you get final word here.
Well, to add on to what these guys were talking about, I would say, you know, it starts with creating a process that cultivates a team culture, first and foremost, because it doesn't matter what tool you're using. If it's the historical us versus them, front of the house, back of the house, which we've all worked in the dealership world, we know that's historically what you see, right? It's sales and service, point the finger and butt heads all the time. It doesn't need to be that way, because at the end of the day, everybody's on the same team. You're all working under the same roof. So first and foremost, creating that, you know, that process for your reconditioning to get done effectively, and it needs to have that that team culture. But then secondly, having a way to accurately measure that process, giving you the visibility to create the accountability, so you know where to press whenever there's problems, or who do I go tap on the shoulder when I see a problem. You know, it gives you the ability to do that, and with technology, you should be able to do that from right here, wherever you are. And that's something that gets missed a lot. And I'm going to date myself for a second, but when I came up in the used car world, when we would do used car walks, we were using what we used to call them a half. It was, you know, the half size sheet of a full piece of paper, and we would write year, make, model, VIN, staple the keys to it. We'd walk back to the car. We had a grease pencil. You walk around the car, you write the 4 square on the windshield, you circle the dings and dents, and then you hand the keys off to the service manager. And that's it. You have no more visibility or any way of being able to track how long that's taking, other than the date that you would write on the car with a grease pencil. With today's technology, if you're not taking advantage of, you know, of the tools that are available to you, you're going to be behind the 8 ball. And I feel like we're in the technology age, right? Where data and software that are available to us, and now with AI coming into the mix in a lot of areas, you got to take advantage of that. And I think that is the best way to move the needle on your reconditioning process.
I will say that some of the opportunities that we found a lot of times were more so related to the fact that people either needed help, they just needed help, they needed more education, they needed understanding of what the actual goal was, in big picture goal. You know, that it isn't for, you know, you just to throw in the CV axle in this car, that there's a big picture goal of what we're trying to accomplish. To get the car, get it right, get it to market, and get it to market at a price that we can sell it fast. Yes, again, more days. And a lot of it's just understanding, and sometimes it's just, you know, some people just need some help, and that gives you the opportunity to find out who needs the most help.
Yeah, and that goes back to your bring them all into a room with some pizza, right? Because you find out a lot of things that you didn't know, and service finds out stuff that they had no idea meant something big to sales, and the same sales finds out something that means something big to detail. And
that's
so
the biggest profitability pickup in history, probably from $300 worth of pizza.
Yeah, absolutely. Best ROI you can get.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. So every day a car sits in recon is money going away. Right. And the dealers who win are the ones who turn recon from that black box that we talked about into a process they can actually see, measure, and improve. And you can do that with ReconVision. Eric, David, and Jacob, thank you so much for joining us today. Everybody,
Thank you, Dave.
See you later.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.